Hello, good evening and a very warm welcome to the Hot Seat. In the Hot Seat this evening is a cyber security and a ICT specialist, Mr. Asela Waidilankara. Good evening to you, Mr. Waidilankara.
Good evening, Faraz.
And thank you very much for being in the Hot Seat.
My pleasure.
We'll get straight to the point. You're here because in the recent week, in the past week, we've had sort of suggestions from, obviously from government quarters, that they may consider opening the floodgates of permitting foreigners to come and work in Sri Lanka, especially in the ICT sector. Now that sounds to me as being rather short-termist. I'd like to ask you initially, what do you think of this idea that is being almost sort of fully mooted to let foreigners come to Sri Lanka and work here?
Well, it's not a new idea, first of all. It is an idea that has been floating around with the ECTA, the Indo-Sri Lanka trade agreement. That was a moot point as well. And recently, I believe the minister, Honourable Minister, has also made such comment. Well, Faraz, it's like this. When you look at opening the floodgates, that would be not a very advisable move per se. But certainly when you look at qualitatively improving our ICT workforce, certain specialized skill should be welcomed into the country.
Oh, indeed. We have that all over the world, even in robust economies and matured economies in the West, for example. They do permit people with specialist skills to come over. But the unfortunately, whoever it is who said this, I think it was Mr. Ram Wickramaratne, it didn't quite make that clear. And so it appears that the government is considering permitting foreigners, for want of a better word, to come in and work in a sector which can surely be easily developed fully. Is our ICT sector developed fully?
We have a very advanced ICT sector, Faraz, to the contrary of some people. We have maybe 4 or 5 world-class companies that operate right here in the shores of Sri Lanka. We have world-class individuals that are serving in the top ICT companies in the world. And of course, there's no shortage of talent, there's no shortage of experience, there's no shortage of brilliance in Sri Lanka. But I'm coming back to the point I made. Given the work that we've done in the ICT industry, and I'm sure even ICT professionals can relate to this, there comes at certain points, certain skill levels. For example, I would take my field, cybersecurity. There are certain aspects of cybersecurity and cybersecurity professionals worldwide as well as in Sri Lanka. There is a gap in skill and there is a shortage of knowledge in the market. So are we to maybe involve some foreigners in Sri Lanka to ensure that our skill levels go up as well as the general knowledge and experience of people go up? Yes, that is actually a very positive step. But do we in turn allow, for example, very low-end developers to come into the country and to disrupt the ICT workforce as is? Now that I believe would be counterproductive, would change the complexity of the job market, would change the complexity of the job demographics, because right now ICT is one of the highest paid industries in Sri Lanka when you take in terms of wages. So maybe the apprehension of the workforce comes from simply a change in the complexion or the nature of that outlook. So do we need to improve the skill level, the knowledge of the existing ICT base? Absolutely. We need to bring in world-class talent. We need to open our doors to ensure that qualitatively we produce better ICT professionals who are not even in the local market. We are pitching them to the international market.
So instead of a sort of a nation of three-wheel drivers and and unskilled workers, we'd transform ourselves to a nation of skilled and professional people.
For us right now, in terms of ICT, they say it's the fourth revolution. After the industrial revolution, this is the revolution that is happening. And we have a perfect chance to leapfrog some of the developed countries and become a leader in this sector. Certain countries have already done that. We need, in order for us to do that, in order for us to endeavor, beyond even local companies, beyond the shores of Sri Lanka, we must ensure that our graduates, our ICT professionals are sought after product worldwide, similar to some other countries. Now, for example, Indian ICT professionals, to their credit, are very sought after in the West and Western companies. So similarly, Sri Lankans, I know personally, because I've met a few and I've dealt with a few people, there are enough and more individuals working in very high level positions, in very high level senior positions in Facebook, in Google, in any other big tech companies, which would surprise common Sri Lankans. So such is the quality as is. But what I'm saying is, listen, let's do better. Not only get a graduate out to do a development capacity job in a local company. We must think global, which is where our success story would lie.
We must think global. Let's find out more about that after this short break. Welcome back to the Hot Seat, and in the Hot Seat today is Asela Waidilankara, who is a specialist in IT matters. Now then, Mr. Waidilankara, do we have the necessary infrastructure, whatever is required, to ensure that the young people of this country are fully trained and so that we can exploit the full potential of the ICT industry in the country?
Yes and no. Do we have the fundamentals? Yes. There are now ICTs as a subject taken in schools. There are ICT training programs. Locally, there are ICT centers that are there to try to develop the skills of the children and anyone interested in joining the ICT workspace. If you take in terms of degrees and specializations offered for ICT, they've grown exponentially. But still, we can do so much for us. There is so much of space to grow. There is so much of injection that can come, especially in terms of entrepreneurship, especially in terms of getting young guys to come, develop their own ideas, turn them into products and services and businesses, and putting them out there into the market and the world. That success story will propel Sri Lanka into as one of the superpowers in terms of ICT. So that's the posturing that we must take in order to ensure that even at a school level, you see, for me personally, yes, it's good that you're teaching ICT in school. But then for us, ICT is a subject that cuts through the entire spectrum. It is not just one subject. It cuts through our entire livelihood. It's disrupted so many media institutes. It's disrupted so many industries, including your own.
Yes.
So this must not be taken as one subject that can be taught.
Yeah.
We must even revamp our entire educational outlook to incorporate and embed ICT in it. So for example, it's no use just teaching science. You must say how science and ICT work together. And this type of engagement, this type of making young kids think like this will make sure that ideas will come out. And these ideas will change the world for us.
Well, that's interesting. But how difficult is it to... Is it too late now when we have so many... They say that in Sri Lanka we have about 1 million three-wheelers. And let's say around, I don't know, let's be generous and say that perhaps 600,000 of those are driven by young people. This has resulted in a lack of masons, of carpenters, painters, handymen, and so on. Because they don't think that they would be highly regarded in society, and I find that difficult to understand. You know, is it really so much of an issue?
I think, just to answer your question about the trishaw, it's because there's a low barrier to entry.
Right.
And it's considered, well, not skilled in the sense there's only a basic skill that's required of driving. But dovetailing back into our discussion on ICT, this is what we need to do as well. We need to make sure the barrier for entry for ICT is very much lower than it is now. We must make sure that any guy who has an idea, it's very easy for him to come and develop that idea or make that idea into an app or make that idea into a product or a service. If we can do that, if we can make these young guys who think that there is no other job than maybe driving a trishaw or, you know, I don't know, something else that they feel that is not their worth but they have to do it anyway, if you can show them that there is an alternative, more lucrative, more prestigious, more better outlook in terms of where they stand socially as well, then that's the key. That change, that motivation is the key that you need to bring in. And those things can be brought in if you can make sure these, what we call hackathons, where we get young people, we actually get them into a room, and sometimes they have ICT skills, sometimes they don't. But you ask them to come up with an idea, Faraz.
Yeah.
And you give them, and the interesting thing is you give them a space of time, let's say about 12 hours from morning to evening. And within that space of time, they have to come up with the idea, they have to come up with how they're going to market the idea. Obviously, they'll have to come up with a prototype of what they're going to market. And all of that in the space of 12 hours. You give opportunities like that to young guys, and the trend is that you keep seeing fantastic goods and services coming out. There is terms of success. There is cases right now of success given these opportunities. There are enough and more apps right now in the market locally that have succeeded, where people are very much surprised right now. Because as we go on, Faraz, the number of internet connections, the number of smartphones, the number of people connected to the internet as even Sri Lankans are going to increase. And because of that, how we use our goods and services are being disrupted. The best indication of that is, right now, if you've noticed, all of the banks, not only one or two, all of the banks have moved their banking services to apps, digital mediums, digitization. So usually when conservative organizations like banks move towards that vector, that is a very clear indication of where the demographic and the market is heading. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure these young guys realize the potential of ICT and how they can make their lives better with ICT. It's no longer necessary just to learn how to code and be a software developer or just be in a 9-to-5 job. My view is, let's encourage entrepreneurship. Let's encourage ICT entrepreneurship. If you can do that, then that's where we win.
And how easy is it to set these things in motion?
It's quite easy, Faraz. I mean, it's not a very cost-intensive thing, but it is about getting the right direction.
You mean in terms of cost, it's nothing like the bond scam?
Well, that's a completely different kettle of fish, but yes.
Yes. No, I'm just trying to look at the values. Yeah.
It's not an intensive value.
It's not in big league.
It would be interesting if there is big league involved, because that will make sure that the skill levels coming out will be more. But
I see. Well, you know, no program's complete without mentioning that 4-letter word, bond. But anyway, but do we need talent from outside as well?
If you look at even this region,
Yeah.
let's take the example of Singapore. because it's the closest to us, and technology-wise, they're very much ahead when you look at entrepreneurship and the startup scene. Now, they have a very liberal open policy when it comes to IT talent coming in. And I know for a fact a lot of Sri Lankans have made use of this facility and made use of the terms that they were given, and are now based in Singapore. I know many Sri Lankan startups who have ventured beyond Sri Lankan shores into Singapore because relatively the setup cost there is quite low and quite easy. The government approvals, you know, getting the approvals, talking to the government, talking to the required stakeholders are very easy. So yes, then you do set up like that, and that's probably the model of success. But there too, we must be cautious, especially in Sri Lanka, because we have a budding industry right now of ICT that is coming in. We must not spoil it, we must not disrupt it, but we must infuse it with the right level of knowledge. We must make sure that specialists come in. Faraz, just to hark back on the point that I made earlier, worldwide, cybersecurity, there's a market of $80 billion US or more, billion.
Right.
And it's set to grow in the next 5 years. And there's a huge requirement right now for cybersecurity professionals, cybersecurity individuals. This is one example I'm saying. I'm sure there are enough and more other examples. But imagine what we can do if we open ourselves to some of these experts to come, train our guys, train our people from their basic development skill into turning them into penetration testing guys, ethical hackers, like that. Once you do that, you have very sought after individuals who would be not even sought after in Sri Lanka, they'll be sought after worldwide, where their value, if their current earning is X, then they would go on to make 10X in their current setup. And this, in order for that to happen, we must make sure that there's mature knowledge coming in, because don't forget, ICT, end of the day, is a knowledge-based industry.
Yeah.
So you must have specialized knowledge, specialized skills coming in to enrich the market. Otherwise, we will not improve ourselves.
Let's talk about how to enrich this IT market straight after this break. And welcome back to the hot seat. In the hot seat today is Mr. Asela Waidelanka, an IT specialist. Now then, Mr. Waidelanka, tell me, we really don't want to be overflowing with people from outside of our shores taking up our jobs, do we?
Faraz, if you limit all the foreigners coming in, my counter question to you is that, then how will we improve? Don't you want a Microsoft or a Oracle or all of these top IT companies?
Oh, of course we do.
To set up shop here?
Yes.
Because that's where the success lies, Faraz.
Yes.
For example, since you brought up India, let me elaborate on that. Now, India has regional development centers for the big IT guys. Oracle has a regional development center in India. I believe Microsoft has a regional development center in India, which is why they're obviously the people employed there, the standard of their skills is higher. And so shouldn't that what we strive for to do, rather than completely shutting the gates?
Yes, my question to you then is, are we forever and a day going to be living in the shadow of the Indian IT industry?
Well, we are never in the shadow of the Indian IT industry. We are on par or even better, I would say, sometimes in certain skill areas. But the moot point I'm making here is that if you just say very vehemently, no one is to come into the shores, no foreign entities can come, no one can set up shop here, then what are you saying? You're really shooting yourself in the foot. You're inhibiting having access to that skill level right now in Sri Lanka. I don't think anyone can say that we are perfect in our systems, we are perfect in the way that we churn out ICT skilled, we are perfect in the way that we churn out graduates of ICT. Obviously, there's room for improvement. There's always room for improvement in any industry, in any market. So this is what I keep harping on. that if we are to bring a better level of skill, a better infusion of skill, we must selectively invite certain entities to come in. Now, that call can be taken from an ICT think tank. For example, we could set up a very high-level ICT think tank to sit down within a day or two and say, okay, A, B, C are the skills that we are looking to improve in Sri Lanka, and for these skills, we are going to invite foreign companies to come and set up shop here. However, XYZ skill is excluded because those are skills that we feel will encroach on the local market and change the demography of the local market or affect the local IT market, and therefore we are not going to invite people of that particular skill sets to come in. And this is a fairly straightforward decision for us.
So the answer then is to permit very specialist skills in people with very specialist skills who can actually make a difference and who can support our own move to develop our own industry.
It's a quality over quantity call. So if you look at, for example, neighboring countries, let's take India since we spoke about India. In terms of churning of number of graduates, we never can match that.
Right.
Because obviously they have more people. It's economies of scale for them. But what we can do is to improve the quality of our graduates, the skill level of our graduates, and therefore make them higher market value in the world market, not even in Sri Lanka, in the world market. And that's what we should strive for. And whatever allows us to get that objective across, yes, let's do it.
That is the way forward.
That is the way forward. And that's how you take this industry forward.
What should we, are we doing anything fundamentally wrong or fundamentally not doing in school level?
Well, we are starting. There is certain places that we are starting. There are certain initiatives that have started, but again, we can take examples from many other countries on how ICT is being taught at a very early age. Far as you have certain countries that start teaching kids robotics, which is considered one of the next big fields in the next 10, 15 years. That's been taught at a kindergarten, school, Montessori kind of age. So that's the kind of engagement and touch and feel of technology that youngsters are being exposed to right now. So are we doing that fully?
Do we have the financial resources to invest in this touch and feel systems?
We do. I believe, in fact, the government...
A laptop for every student, is that beyond scope, beyond hope?
No, not at all. I mean, there are initiatives where, if you take African countries right now...
But our spend, I think, on education, they said it'll be 6%, but it isn't. It's much less than that.
But we can do more. And if you ask me, can we do more? Yes, we can do so much more.
What should we cut out then? Because we all like to do everything.
Well, that you must, that's a decision beyond my pay grade. But certainly investment in education, investment in skill building is where you can go forward in this day and age. Very simple.
Should we cut out on the wasteful? Well, obviously we should cut out on the wasteful spend. Can that be channeled into something as crucial as this, of developing the ICT industry?
Absolutely. If we can give a tab to every school child, if we can give a laptop to every school child, if we can make sure that any guy who's maybe finished their O-levels and doesn't want to pursue A-levels gets a basic course in program development. If you want guys who get out of A-levels, who are not getting into university, they are given a 3-month course on just development, basic computer development, software development. We can do wonders for us. And then, like you said, maybe these guys won't go out and do, well, relatively unskilled jobs, like driving a trishaw.
And they get into all sorts of trouble doing that thing.
Of course. Of course.
So the bottom line is, we mustn't shut the gate entirely, but we must be selective in whom we take in.
We must take I mean, this is a word that's been thrown around, but there must be a national policy when it comes to these things. There must be professionals who get together and say, ABC is what we want, and the rest, no, that's not going to happen. But we must have the discussion with the industry professionals, with creating a think tank, creating a channel for them to voice their opinions on exactly what's required. Let's not close the doors completely, because that is not the path to development, that is not the path to success. But certainly let's be selective, because we do not want to impact our market as well. And we don't want to impact the Sri Lankan ICT community, which is talented very in its own way and world class in its own way, which is why they're sought after, Faraz. Don't forget.
Yes.
There are enough and more companies right now, I have to impress upon this, there are enough and more companies right now that are very active in the US, that's traded in the US stock exchanges, that are well respected worldwide, and that have engagement with tech giants. So
well, I met some people. Their company runs the London, the technical side of the London Stock Exchange.
And certainly there is one company that develops the back end for companies like eBay and Amazon.
Well, there you are.
There you go. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
So let's stay positive. Let's invest in the future of this latest technology. On that note, thank you very much, Aseelawadi Lanka, for coming and explaining all that to us. And we'll see you same time, same place in a fortnight's time. Take care. Good night.